Right, and we are live. Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. Apologies for the delay, bit of technical issues here on a Tuesday morning, but we are live. We do have a Springbok squad, and it's a very interesting squad, which is already causing a lot of debate, and very interested to see what the reaction is going to be, because a lot of people are quite upset, a lot of people are questioning certain decisions. I don't think it's that surprising of a Springbok squad. I think that most of the decisions make sense. There are a couple of players who are very unlucky, but they always are, aren't they? You know, there always are big decisions to make, and you can't have a 50, 60-man squad, so you have to make the big calls. And yeah, I think that is what the squad looks like. I think it is a squad which it just shows you how big the depth is in South Africa. It shows you how many good players there are. You look at some of the players on the standby list, for example, and you think, how can they not be in the Springbok squad? But you also then look at the squad and you think, well, who are they going to replace? And that becomes the problem, isn't it? So it's an interesting one. And very interesting to see everybody's thoughts. So first things first, I'm going to put a poll in the comments saying, do you like the Springbok squad? Yes or no? Simple yes or no. And if you don't, let me know some of the players that you think have been snubbed, for example, and who might be in the squad and who you think they should replace. That's also the important thing for me to make, is that don't just say Albert Lowe has to be in the squad. Ahead of who? Because that's the problem, isn't it? Because I know that he's going to be one that a lot of people are going to talk about. So let's go through it, shall we? And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the different parts of the squad, the forwards, the backs, and then we're going to look at the standby list, which is for an interesting one as well, which is mainly based on the players who were in the original squad that don't make the sort of final squad. Nobody's really been dropped completely out of the entire sort of the mix. So that is probably the important part over there. Right, shall we start with the forwards? Let's have a look, shall we? This is the forwards that have been named, 22 that have been named. The big surprise there for me is Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Gerard Steenekamp, somebody I didn't really mention much in the uploaded video, which has gone up already. But he's also been called up, as has Jan Kobler. So in that sort of forward pack there, the only uncapped player is, I think it's Pepsi Buthelezi is uncapped, and Jan-Hendrik Wessels is uncapped. There are 4 uncapped players in the squad, by the way. Morne van den Berg and... Who's the other one? Morne van den Berg and there's another forward, actually. There are four uncapped players in the squad. In fact, actually, it could be another. Jan Kobler is capped, I'm pretty sure. Trying to be back. The reason I say that is because they're busy having an argument on the Springbok WhatsApp group as to who the uncapped players are. It's Jan-Hendrik Wessels. I'm pretty sure Jan Kobler has got a cap. Morne van den Berg doesn't have a cap. Pepsi Buthelezi doesn't have a cap. Okay, well, we'll get to it anyway. For example, Jan Kobler doesn't have a cap, by the way. Oh, yeah, he got injured. He was in the squad and then he didn't get to have a cap. So let's have a look at the squad, shall we? Pepsi Buthelezi, I think that's quite a surprise inclusion. I think that very much covering number 6 rather than number 8, although there is an option at 8. But I think it's the fact that he can cover 6 as well, which really puts him into that squad ahead of somebody like an Albert Lowe, for example. If we look at the rest of the squad, it's pretty straightforward. I'm very glad to see Thomas Toy in there. A lot of people complaining about Volko Lowe. Thomas Toy playing, I think, loose head and tight head, does set him apart. And he's had a sensational season. He was one of the best players in the Premiership. And it's a great... it's a great reward for him, because he missed out on the World Cup. And I think that you would talk about players been around that box squad for a long time, never really always had his chance. And I think he made the brave decision to leave the Sharks, to leave his comfort zone, go to the Premiership, which sometimes can mean really sacrificing your international aspirations, because a lot of the squad often gets picked from South Africa, and obviously, the lineman camps, for example, all in South Africa. And for players who are on the fringes, for example, they risk potentially falling out of the setup if they do go overseas. I think players who are very well established, like a Siya Kolisi, he can go anywhere, and he's going to get picked regardless of where he goes. He could go and play in Germany, and he'd probably get picked. But I think he was a bit of a fringe player, and I think he kind of maybe even made peace with the fact that maybe he's not going to get picked, and decided, right, I'm going to go to the Premiership, going to make that move. It was going to be a decent money move, and look how it's paid off for him. It's actually put him so much more on the Springbok radar than I think it ever has been. So it's a brave move for him, and I think it's really stood out there. I think he's made the best of it. Apart from that, Siya Kolisi, Trevor Nyakane back. No issue there. Trevor, played in the World Cup final, had a couple of massive scrums. Has been such an important player for the Boks over the past few years. That British and Irish Lions series, you think when he came off the bench, almost single-handedly won us the game with those couple of late scrum penalties. As a similar kind of thing to an Oxen chair. Salman Murat is an interesting inclusion. Ruben van Heerden, by the way, we'll talk about the standby list, has been called up as well. So we'll talk about him in a bit. But Salman Murat, for me, was always going to stay in the squad because we are short on locks at the moment. Archie Snyman officially back into the mix there. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we're going to see Eben Etzebeth and next to Frankie Moss as a starter. Archie Snyman probably off the bench. Salman Murat, I'll be surprised if he does face Ireland. I don't think we'll necessarily go sort of 6-2-7-1 split over there against them. Apart from that, no sort of real surprises. Apart from those sort of players at the bottom there. Johan Kroblock coming in. He's been on the radar for a while. Was told to basically bulk up a little bit. That he was a bit small a few years ago when he first got his call up. So I think that he has done that, to be fair. He has bulked up and he's a bit of a bigger player, and he's had a great season for the Bulls. A player which surprised me, I'm not massively surprised by Chaos Dennekamp. Steven Kitshoff being injured means we do need an extra loose head, and so he gets the call up. He's been involved in the system. Jan-Hendrik Wessels really surprised me, and I'm a bit of a difficult one when it comes into the Jan-Hendrik Wessels chat, because I can understand the talent from a young age. We've seen him and the potential he's had. He's not done it yet for me, really, on this level. You look at his minutes, for example. I think it's like less than 400 minutes he played during the season. Siphiwe Matanzima, for example, actually played more minutes than him. I don't think he's a phenomenal scrummager, and I think that his line-out work, for example, still is yet to make him a standout hooker. So you talk about utility players. I worry about him as being a player who's, because he's been moved around, is not settled into either position particularly well. And I think that could potentially be an issue. So I'm surprised a bit by that selection ahead of somebody like an Andre Hugo Venter, who I think they highly rate. But I suppose, again, number 1 and 2. I think the main thing is that it's a big squad. It's 39 players. And there are standby players, and I think that he's someone that they don't view as playing against Ireland. Might get a cap against Portugal, for example. But that, for me, I think is probably the big thing. Is he's a bit of a project player. The last time he actually played, Jan-Hendrik Wessels, was actually Northampton in those quarterfinals, where he came off the bench 21 minutes. So yeah, I think it is a bit of a strange. That's probably the biggest strange selection with regards to somebody who's not been playing a lot of rugby and everybody talks about the outrage of Jordan Hendrickse when you think that, how was he being picked as the second choice fly half? He played 1,100 minutes this season, played almost as many minutes as Sinan Humber did. Whereas you've got a Andrew Wessels who's made the squad playing 362 minutes, doesn't make the 23, is not within the top 2 best hookers at the Union, and not within the top 2 best props, because he's been behind Siphiwe Matanzima as well as Chaos Dennekamp for most of the season as well. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a strange one. Jasper Wiese is in the squad. He is a banned currently, but will become available, and so will train with the squad. I think that he will be the starting number 8 when we take on the All Blacks, for example. I'll be very surprised if he's not. But Evan Lewis gets a bit of an inside run during that Ireland squad. So a nice opportunity for him as well there. Let's go to some of the comments and talk about what everybody's got to say over here. So Michael saying BJ Dixon's going to be a workhorse, the engineer. Yeah, I'm not surprised he's been recalled. He's been retained at all. I think he is Peter Steph Toy-esque in the way he plays. Very physical, very mobile around that park. Incredible work rate. I think he ticks the box for everything. When the Springbok managers sit down and they talk about players' attributes that they want, I think that they basically just sum up Ben Jason Dixon. Hardworking, grafter. They talk about those battle stats. How many battle stats do you have? How many rucks are you hitting? How many tackles are you making? How dominant are those tackles? When you got the ball, how many hits are you making? Are you getting over the gain line, for example? And he is one of those players who I think just has so many battle stats and really good battle stats as well. Kenneth Mark says, what should Wilco Lowe do to be recalled? Well, he has been recalled. He's not in the squad, but he is in the standby list, which he hasn't been on the radar for the last few years. So it is a bit of a recall. Again, I suppose the question is who? Somebody's saying ahead of Trevor Nyakane. Trevor Nyakane can play loose head and tight head. We don't have another loose head with experience after Oxen Chair. Trevor Nyakane has played far more at loose head at international level than, for example, Currie. So I don't think it's necessarily a like-for-like replacement, So Wilco Lowe is really competing against Vincent Koch and Frans Malherbe, in my opinion. I think if you look at that, then I think you is he going to be ahead of Vincent Koch and Frans Malherbe on form? Maybe there's an argument, but the Boks manager going to trust the players they've got, the players they've always rewarded them, and Vincent Koch, Frans Malherbe, Trevor Nyakane won us the World Cup, so they've gone with those three. So if you go back and look, for example, at Trevor over the years, he has been playing more at tight head, especially for Racing, for example, and has been playing majority at tight head. But if you look at for the Boks, you go back to the 21-22 season, played primarily at loose head for the Boks actually. In that British and Irish Lions series in 2021 as well, also played one at tight head, starting tight head, and then two off the bench at loose head, played loose head, and then twice for a season played at loose head. So he is as good at loose head as his tight head. So I think that he'll be in as the reserve loose head, to be honest. I think that's what we're going to do. Similarly to Thomas Toy, he can also play on both sides. And that's a really big asset that the Boks look at. If you look at a season, he has primarily played at tight head. I think he started just once at loose head for Sale Sharks, so he's been primarily at tight head. In fact, over the years he's basically become a tight head, to be perfectly honest. Yes, he can play at loose head, but for the Sharks, the last time he played loose head was the last time he started loose head for the Sharks. He hasn't basically in years and years and years. He's actually played more loose head for South Africa, ironically, than he has for the Sharks. But he is a loose head option, and that is a problem with Steven Kitshoff being injured, Gerard Steenekamp being very young and inexperienced. So that is the backs over there. Not too much really else to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about the forwards. Let's talk about the backs, shall we? Because a very interesting a couple of decisions there with who they've retained as well as who they've included. Just trying to get them to the screen in a second. Right, those are your backs. Big news is that Lekanya is back, fit, firing, and ready. He was injured and has been declared fit and has rejoined the squad. Also rejoining the squad, Billy Leroux and Currie Arendse and Kubas Ranoff. So the standard, the World Cup winners are back in. Sacha Fane-Magomezulu has been retained, which I said he would be. I think, again, that versatility point of view, can play at 10, can play at 15, can play at 12, which where he's actually played the most. So I think that's quite that's a non-surprise. Manie Libbok being retained as well. A lot of people talking about the fact that Sia Masuku should be ahead of him. Again, the Springbok management does not just throw players in and out. They stick to their players. They stick to the players they trust. They stick to the players that they've been working with, for example, and there's a lot of loyalty in the Springboks coaching staff, which a lot of times you can say is a bad thing. A lot of times people say that you shouldn't have this sort of blind loyalty. But there's been that loyalty in the players that the coaches have had, which have really actually been one of their biggest assets. The fact that these players know that their coaches fully trust in them, which is how they've been getting every last little inch of performance out of them. So it's been an important part of this coaching staff's mantra is to back the players that they pick and to keep giving them as many chances as possible, because they want to provide an environment where, you know, a player like Asash Zulu is not going to sit there going out and playing every single time thinking I'm going to get dropped if I don't play well. They don't do that. They sit there saying, we back you, we trust you, you will come good. And that is such an important backing to have as a player, where you're not trying to overperform all the time and as a result sort of do too much. You're in an environment, and he spoke about this actually in the interview, and if you haven't, go and check it out. It's really, really cool. He talks about how comfortable you feel in the environment and how much the players have worked to make it comfortable. So that comes with being loyal and backing the players that you trust in the BOK environment. So yeah, I think players who are interestingly have been retained, as I mentioned, such Fami Zulu can, as somebody mentioned over there in the comments, which I'm going to go to in a bit, can play a little bit of that Damon Williams role, 10, 12, 15, can play across that backline. Apele Fassi was rewarded for that game he had against Wales. I do think it'll be Willie LaRue come Ireland, but Fassi getting that opportunity over there. Kubus Reinach being called up, again, not too surprising. Moine van den Berg being retained, maybe is a bit of a surprise. We've always loved to have 4 scrum halves in the squad, don't we? So, Faf de Klerk, Grant Williams, Kubus Reinach, and Moine van den Berg all involved there. My guess is that it'll be a Faf de Klerk to start if he is fit. There are injuries, by the way. Injuries at the moment currently include Ben Jason Dixon, Edel van der Merwe, and Edel van der Merwe, Michael Pimpy, and Faf de Klerk are the injured 3, which apparently are niggles, but could yet be in this frame for selection next week. So I think Faf de Klerk will probably start with a Grant Williams coming off the bench, maybe Kubus Reinach coming off the bench. If Faf de Klerk doesn't start, then I think Kubus Reinach starts. Still with the Grant Williams coming off the bench, what we saw during the World Cup, for example. So it's an interesting one. And but I think Moine van den Berg, for me, will face Portugal. I think they really do rate him. When I've been watching the training and stuff like that, he's been very heavily involved. He's been working a lot with Zandila Stick when you've watched the warm-ups and stuff like that. So I think that he is somebody who they do rate. Obviously, a big name is Andre Pollard comes back into test selection. And Moni Liebok, again, same kind of thing. You know, you've got to back him. You know, a year ago, Moni Liebok was, you know, taking to test rugby like a duck to water. He really was, to be honest. And you look at 2 games, you know, you look at that semi-final, and you look at purely the goal-kicking part of it, and you think that he's had a bad game. Moni Liebok was man of the match against Scotland, one of the most important games for us during the World Cup. Starts against Ireland, where we just came short. And, you know, everybody's talking about, you know, oh, he's out of form and stuff like that. I don't think he's out of form. Yeah, he's had over 100 points in the URC. I think he had a poor quarterfinal. And the problem is, we've got to got that recency bias, don't we? That the last time he played, he wasn't great. Therefore, he's not in good form, which is nonsense at the end of the day. At the end of the day, that Stormers side are a different side when he doesn't play. When he plays, the Stormers side become one of the best sides in the URC. When he doesn't play, they tend not to be perfectly honest. So, you know, again, a little bit of loyalty, I think, goes a long way with Moni Liebok, and the BOK management are going to reward that. We saw in Chase the Sun, they sat there saying, we are a better side. Andre Pollard was available. He was available during those playoffs and was in the bench. And they said very simply, if we're going to beat France, we need to have something like a Moni Liebok because of what he brings from the game point of view, more than just the goal kicking. And yes, eventually, you know, you then go into a final and you go, right, Andre Pollard, and he kicks beautiful. We all know that. But to say Moni Liebok has not been in form, he didn't even say he had a bad World Cup. I think it was wrong. I think he struggled for 2 games. Apart from that, he didn't really put a foot wrong. And it's one of those things. Butch James, for example, didn't kick for goal in the 2007 World Cup. Didn't have to be. Percy Montgomery. If you had a Percy Montgomery, there would not be a single person talking about Moni Liebok as form from the World Cup. You know, that's the reality. If Damian Willemse could kick for goal like Percy Montgomery could, and that's not a criticism of Damian Willemse, by the way. Let's not try and go that direction. So, yeah, I've got no issue with them retaining Moni Liebok. He's been very good for the Boks, and had some very good games for us. As I said, man of the match in that performance against Scotland. I mean, how important was that game? The best Scottish side, arguably, ever. And he scored 6 points during it, and won the man of the match with that incredible no-look pass. Cross kick, for example, was fantastic against Scotland. Was decent against Ireland. Was very comfortable against Tonga, and had some very good moments against France. You know, again, look at that taste in the sun, for example, and you remember the good moments that he had against France. And then was the early sub against England. That was when he played half an hour and was pulled. But he's had a good. I still think he's had a very good time for. I mean, he actually won Breakthrough Player of the Year last year. For the player who got capped within the last sort of calendar year before that, and up until the end of last season. So yeah, I think he deserves to be there, and I think that I've got no issue with that. And then we look at the rest of it there. Jesse Creel, I think for me was still started outside centre despite Lakanya being around the park there. I think that Currie, Ches and Colby probably be the starting wings. I don't think there's too many other big surprises in this backs, for example. Let's go into the comments. And yes, Van Wyk is injured. So the players that were listed as injured, not available for selection: Stephen Kitsoff, Jean Klein, Lourt Diaga, Cameron Hanekom, which I mentioned yesterday when I did my video. So he was not considered for selection because he's injured, had a hamstring injury during that URC final, and so not available. And as well as, I lost it now, where the injured players, as well as Jaden Henderson still injured, Henk van Wyk injured, Kanan Moody, as well as Damian Willemse, all injured and therefore not considered. So yeah, going to some of the comments over here. What do we have saying? There is no captain decision yet. I will ask Rassie Erasmus tomorrow during the press conference what the decision is for his captain decision, or when they're going to make it. CP9 said, I don't think Mani will play against Ireland. Well, I mean, we know Andre Pollard's going to start. I'd imagine Pollard's going to start, would be my guess. But you never know. But yeah, so we'll wait and see there. But Alex is still disappointed there's no Tyne Green. Other than that, I think it's a good squad. So MC saying the new attacking style will fit Mani better than Pollard, but if we need to grind a win out, then put Pollard on. That's also going to be an interesting thing, isn't it? You know, Tony Brown now in charge of that backline. And we definitely did see his influence against Wales. I mean, we tried to round out the 22, for example. We saw a couple of moves. So I think that he's also going to have a big say in the selection of the Tensy ones. So, yeah. Brian saying Wilco's a better scrummager player than France, Vincent Trevor, and importantly, much younger. To say that Wilco Louw is a better scrummager than Frans Malherbe might be one of the ballsiest shouts I've ever heard. Frans Malherbe, who's about not even that old, by the way, he's 33 years old. It's not that deep. Is arguably the best tight end in the world. So that's a big shout to say. And Wilco Louw's been great, and he's on the reserve list. But to say that he's a better scrummager than a Frans Malherbe is a very large shout. Yes, he is slightly younger. He's 30 years old. None of those props particularly. Look, Trevor Nyakane is not going to make the next World Cup. I think he'll be here and it'll be a bit of a sort of passing over. But also, guys, I don't know if you guys have noticed or if you guys have heard, we're playing against arguably the second or third best side in the world next weekend. So this squad is not about 2027 purely. We've also got to win games, guys. We've also got to win trophies as well. It's a big squad already. There's lots of young players already. I still want to win games, though. I'm not going to... I mean, to sit there and say, okay, let's bin Frans Malherbe, let's bin Trevor Nyakane, let's bin Vincent Koch because, they're old and we need to stop the next generation. Crap. Absolute crap for me. We've got to still win games. We've got to still win trophies. I want to see us win Rugby Championships. We need to win more than just the World Cup. We're good enough. We're good enough to win more than just the World Cup. Yes, the World Cup is the be-all and end-all, but why should it be? Why do we have the best players in the world and we have to choose to not win Rugby Championships so that we can win the World Cup? Let's start doing both. That's what, for me, made the New Zealand teams of old so good, is they used to win everything. Let's start winning everything. And so let's not bin the entire squad simply because players are over 30 years old. So So CP saying would love to see what Henko van Beek will do in Test Rugby once he's fit. Ricardo saying Jesse's too good at the moment. Ryan says you don't need Inukhan to cover Loosehead as well. You have Thomas Toy do that. Inukhan is already 35. If he was on form, then I'd understand it. Okay, so if you're going to make that kind of statement, then I would like a full report of his season in France, where he has played, and I'm not going to lie to you, 760 minutes in the top 14, as well as 206 in the Champions Cup. So across his 20 games for Racing this season, where he was a starter of 75% of them, this Racing, which by the way got to those quarterfinals, like a full-on report showing me why he's not been on form. I'm not going to tell you what his form has been like that because I haven't watched enough. I've watched parts of him this season, and when I've watched him, he's looked really good. And during the World Cup, he looked pretty good. So it's easy for us to sit there and say Wilco Louw's in better form because we watch the Bulls every weekend. We don't watch Racing every weekend. Let's be brutally honest here, people. And look, if you do, and I'm speaking out of turn, then fair enough. But I'm going to make the assumption here, which I think is a relatively safe assumption. We watch the URC. Therefore, we watch Wilco Louw far more than we watch Trevor Nyakane. We're watching Ulrich Lowe far more than we're watching Siya Kolisi at Racing. You know, we're watching Wilco Louw far more than Thomas du Toit at Bath. We are, you know, it's not even just it's also an accessibility thing, you know, it's easily available for us. So the last time Trevor Nyakane played for South Africa was the World Cup final where he finished the game for us at tight head and was very solid. You know, he played against Ireland in that game as well, and played against Scotland. So he played some important games during the World Cup. When Vince Scott got injured, he got the opportunity. Again, I look back at that British and Irish Lions series. When Trevor Nyakane has been fit and firing, he's very rarely let the box down. He's a phenomenal player. So, and again, you know, there are certain players who have always stepped up in a box jersey. Siya Kolisi have always been a different player when he's playing for Springboks than when he is at provincial level, for whatever reason it is. For example, you remember those calls about Siya Kolisi being, you know, shouldn't have been called up 2 years ago, and he then went to play for the Boks and actually won Player of the Year. So, yeah, I think it's tricky to make those sort of statements. How did unplay with the season before his injury? I thought he was much better. Kanyam looked this season a lot more like his old self. Who was I saying to? Somebody went and watched the Sharks, and they were just saying, he said, it was my uncle, who actually played for Zim back in the day. He was saying that when he went to go watch the Sharks, he absolutely loved watching the Kanyam live. He says, you don't understand how involved he is and how good he is around the park watching on TV than you do when he's live. He said his movement, his pace, the way he plays the game, he said it was absolutely incredible to watch and play. So I think he has been a lot better this season. I don't think he's moving Jesse Creel. Jesse Creel will start against Ireland. I don't see why you'd even think about dropping him in the form he's in currently. But if he does get injured, I am a bit more confident that we are getting the Lekanya of old if Lekanya does start in the midfield there. Little big media co saying, I'd be happy with a bigger squad, send a separate away team to play the 2 games in Australia and the one in Argentina, fill it with young players who don't have Oz condition experience since URC started. No! We want to win this, don't we? Why must we sacrifice games against Australia? Not that I'm saying we're going to necessarily sacrifice them. I know it's Australia not the best side, but I want to win the Rugby Championship. Am I the only one that wants to win the Rugby Championship this year? Am I the only one that wants to go and beat Ireland to both tests? Thank you very much. And then go and beat Australia. By the way, those are our first 2 games. You go over to Australia and you win those first 2 games. You know, you have to probably beat New Zealand once and beat Argentina twice. And then you've probably won the Rugby Championship. I think this season we can beat Ireland twice and go and put that whole conversation to bed. And we can go win the Rugby Championship. And we can go to the Autumn Nations Series at the end of the year saying, in the last 12 months, we have won the World Cup, the Rugby Championship, and beaten Ireland, what was the number 1 side in the world over the past few years, twice. That's what I believe we can do, and that's what I want us to do. So pick the best squad. There are youngsters in the squad. That's the thing. You can't say there aren't youngsters there. Morne van der Berg, player for the future. Edel van der Merwe, he's 28, 29, makes the next World Cup, player for the future. Grant Williams, still very young. Liebach makes another at least one more World Cup, if not maybe even two. Jesse Creel's not an old player. Sasha Fahmy Gomezulu's 22 years old. Apele Fassi, young player there. Kurt Lawrence makes the next World Cup. All of those players. In fact, the only player there I don't think makes the next World Cup is Villaroo and potentially a Kobus Reinach. Maybe a Damien Delendi, who I think is about 32 now, 33 this year. So maybe he doesn't make the next World Cup. And maybe a Cheslin Colby doesn't make the World Cup. But majority of those players make the next World Cup. So I don't think we need to bin them. Same as the forwards. I'm going to go back to my forwards. You know, if you look at those players, Khaleesi probably doesn't make the World Cup. Vincent Koch probably doesn't make the World Cup. Frank Mossa probably doesn't make the World Cup. Maybe Trevor doesn't make the next World Cup. Who else is not going to make the next World Cup? PSF Toy might. Evan Etzebeth probably will. But Akroblot does. Pepsi Wood Laser does. Ben Jason Dixon does. Marks does. Bongi Manami does. Salman Murat does. Oxen Chair does. Evan Lewis does. Quacker Smith does. Archer Sneeman does. Gerard Stennekamp does. Marco Verstaden, maybe not. Jasper Visa does. So it's still very much a squad that this could very well be our squad come, you know, the 2027 World Cup. And I don't see why we can't also win trophies along the way. Ishwin Clark is saying, I surely do think the squad has the best of both. When we last played against Ireland, we were short of fly halves, yet we still managed to lose a nail biter. Watch us now in full force. Spansbeck saying, Creel from Bulls can feel hard done by. Yeah, I think he could probably argue that he maybe had a better season than Ethan Hooker, who's been a bit of a, I wouldn't say a flash in the pan. That's the wrong way, but he's come in late in the season, had a really good few games, now sort of rewarded. David Creel has been very consistent for the last 2 years. And so I think that he could feel disappointed, maybe not to be in that standby list. I don't think he makes the final list, for example. But let's look at that standby list, shall we? So that is the standby list, by the way. So Jean-Luc Dupré, who's a lot of people were complaining about not being involved in the last few years. He is still on the... the whole formatting of this thing's gone here. Fix it in 2 seconds. So he is obviously still very much on the radar for the box, which is good to see. If you are a Jean-Luc Dupré fan, and I'm just going to quickly sort that formatting out, and then we'll have a relook at that. And I think somebody mentioned obviously the fly halves thing. I think that's an important part because you know we had a bit of an issue where for years, and to be fair, and I think the Bok manager would probably have to admit it, they kind of put it on themselves because we only had 2 fly halves, Nelson Yankees and Andre Pollard, for the entire sort of time post-COVID. And then obviously the whole Alton Yankees incident came, and then we had an injury to Andre Pollard, and all of a sudden Martin Liebach, who was barely a Springbok, was thrown into the deep end and went to the World Cup with less than 5, 6 or 7 caps to his name, less than 10 caps, and he was the starting fly half at the World Cup. So also, I mean, factor that into his performance, by the way, you know, which I think you do need to. So now we have decided to add all the Springbok, all the fly halves. So let's look at that standby list. Jean-Luc Dupré, Joseph David, Neertling Bashir, Sinampilo Gamedi, Elric Lowe, Wilco Lowe, Institut Ruben van Heerden, Andre Hugo Venter. What you are seeing there is, look at the forwards, you are seeing the heir to be. Maybe not so much Jean-Luc Dupré, but you are seeing the in future. So, for example, Titan, Francois Herbert retires, Neertling Bashir is there. Trevor Nyakana retires, Wilco Lowe is there. Thomas Toye retires, Intuka Mtlunu's there. You know, that's what we're seeing. Franco Mossa retires, Ruben van Heerden's there. Sia Khaleesi or a Pistef Toye moves on, Albert Lowe's there. You know, that's what we're seeing. So the standby list is the future. Same with the backline players, for example. Villiers Leroux moves on, Kieran Horn slots in. Injury to Andre Pollard or whatever, you've got Jordan Henderson and Sia Masuku. Slayman Hartzenberg for Jason Colby for Mapimpi, for example. So Ethan Hooker there for Damien Delendi. You know, so that is the future. Those players are your fringe players for the future, and there's some very nice fringe players there. Very good players. You know, I think that I will still die on my hill. I still think Jordan Henderson will play many tests for the Boks. I think Kieran Horn's going to play many tests for the Boks. Suleiman Hartzenberg's looked like a Springbok in waiting for a long time. Ethan Hooker's obviously the big exciting option. You look at those forwards. And Volker Low will once again play for the Boks. I've got no doubt. I think Ruben van Heerden will become a fantastic player for the Boks. Albert Low, and there can be somebody who's talking about Ruan Nokia being very unlucky to miss out, and I think he is unlucky to miss out, but I think it's Ruan Nokia or Ruben van Heerden. And I'll tell you what, I would pick Ruben van Heerden. In terms of age-wise, there's not much between them. 1 year, so it's not like it's an age thing. And for me, the big thing is look at the size of Ruben van Heerden versus look at the size of Ruan Nokia. I think Ruben van Heerden is a proper line-out jumper, for example, really, really talented. But I think very importantly, he's a big ball carrier. He's a big physical presence. Ruan Nokia is a grafter, and I'm not going to say he's had a bad season. He has been fantastic. But I think that Ruben van Heerden, for me, is such a big physical presence that when we want to, inverted commas, F them up physically, he is a player who fits into that mold. So what else are we saying over here? Alpha Lincoln says, agree with the championship by putting All Blacks away before we start talking next World Cup. CP Nunes saying, Delenda aging like fine wine, dipped a bit when he should have been young and prime, but he is in great form. Clinton says, great squad. Unfortunately, a squad can only be that big, but best is definitely there. Most excited to see the wings. I rate them the best wings in the world, no matter who starts. Fanny Rose talking about Johan Goosen. I think Johan Goosen was on the radar. He was part of the lineman camps, and he got injured once again, and I think the Bok management said, bang. So yeah, I think that is what happened with him. And I think that he, again, once again, basically the untimely injury was probably the final straw. I think they were looking at him and saying, all right, do we give him a final chance? And then it just didn't really happen. Because saying Sia Masuku sent out players, Libo can spark a backline. I don't think he's quite the same player, but I understand what you mean in terms of an attacking fly half. I love Sia Masuku. I think that if he had been playing since the beginning of the season and he had played September through to now, he'd have a better chance. I think he's going to have a great season next season. I think he will be involved in the Boks again next season. I think him and Gordon Hendricks are going to be a really interesting fight for that number 10 jersey. Little Big Media saying, why do you automatically assume an Oz away team would lose? We have incredible depth. Use it now. I'll tell you exactly why I assume that. If we go look at the last few years playing in Australia, we have won 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1 out of the last 12 games away in Australia. That's how many times we won in Australia. 1 out of the last 12. So the last time we won was in 2022, where we played them at Sydney Football Stadium, and we won 24 points to 8. The weekend before, by the way, we lost 25 points to 17. Before that, the last time we beat Australia in Australia was in Perth in 2009. We don't do well in Australia. We have never done well in Australia. So that's why I'm saying, you asked, that is one of the toughest things for us to do, is to go over. We've actually got a better record in New Zealand recently than we do against Australia. So that's why I wouldn't go and say, cool, the youngsters can go over to Australia. And I know that this is not the strongest Australian side, but genuinely that is the record. And there's a reason for that record. Australia are good at home. Ricardo saying Ethan Hooker, definitely the future. Michael says, I do think SAA would be good for those players, or SA Cup and Currie Cup players to play against lower tier countries and clubs. 100%. 100% agree that we should see an SAA. I think it is very expensive, unfortunately. So that is the issue. But I'd love to see an SAA side involved. Hopefully towards the end of the year, we can try and get a bit of a core. Doug was saying, anyone know how long Moody is out for rugby? I'm not entirely sure if he's out for the Rugby Championship. We wait and see. A lot of people talking about the SAA idea. Albert Finnegan saying, I see what Rusty is doing. He's trying to move away from A and B team and rather have a mix of best to A and A plus team. I think that's the main thing, isn't it? It's about having your strongest team, and then be able to integrate players into that team, like we did against Wales. That Wales side was not an experimental side. Yes, it was missing a lot of big players. No Ches and Colby, no Andre Pollard, no Sia Khaleesi, no Jasper Visa, for example. No Billy LaRue, no Curtly Aronson. So we're definitely missing some key players, but it was still so much experience. And that's a nice environment for Sashfami Gomezulu, for example, to make his debut in. And that's what we've done very well, is that we are incorporating players, young players, new players, into a system that is already working. And as a result, we are giving them the best opportunity to succeed. And that's what I want to see, And that's why I think, and I've been very disappointed actually by the reaction to Jordan Hendricks' performance, because yes, it wasn't his best, and now everyone's saying, well, you see, he's not cut out for Test rugby. And I think that is such a toxic reaction. It's such a toxic way of looking at it. For a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, making his debut, starting at 10, and, in Twickenham, for example, having a subpar game, and now he's no longer good enough for Test rugby. I mean, if he had, for example, had played in a few weeks' time against Portugal in a packed up Bloemfontein with, Damon Delende inside him, Jesse Creel as at the other wings, the two wings being Curtly Aronson, Chesney Colby, Billy LaRue, Faf de Klerk, and we played him at 10 there, he probably would have had an absolutely sensational game, and he would have turned around saying, this kid's the next big thing. We don't bin players based on one game. We can't. We've done that too many times in the past, where we have absolutely torn players apart after one game, and they've never come back from it. You've got to trust that these players will come good. He's a young player, and he will come good, for example. And then that's the thing I think this Bok management understand, is that they need to make an environment where these players are going to thrive. Make an environment where Suleiman Halstenberg can become a world beater. Provide an environment for Sashfami Gomezulu to become one of the best, if not the best 10s in the world. That's what we've got to do. But we do that as fans by backing our players. Don't judge a player after 55 minutes and decide he can't play Test rugby. We've done that too many times in the past, and I think we need to start learning about this. That sometimes players take a while to get going. Let's be perfectly honest. Damien Willemse did not light the world on fire when he started his Test career. He didn't, and we all knew how talented Damien Willemse was. But when Damien Willemse, as a 19-year-old, played for South Africa, he did not light the world on fire. We did not suddenly sit there going, holy shit, this is going to be the man to change everything. He made his debut back in, I think it was 2018 or 2018. He made his debut as a 19-year-old, and he got a couple minutes off the bench. Damien Willemse, for me, is top 5 best players in the world. I will happily say that. Based on that World Cup, top 5 best players in the world right now. I think he is. If not, at least top 10. And I think he could be the best player in the world. So let's let other players struggle and then thrive. Let's not bin players after one bad game. Evan Roos has had a quiet start to Test rugby. Looked a lot better this weekend against Wales. But, similarly, had a fantastic season for the Stormers. URC Player of the Year. Had one game for the Boks. Maybe didn't impress. And everyone's like, oh, you see, he's not cut out for Test rugby. No, nonsense. He will get there. But we've got to give him the chance to get there. People didn't rate Franco Mostert. Going back to my forwards. People didn't rate Franco Mostert when he first started playing Test rugby. He was part of a really poor tide. Oh, he's too light. He's too lightweight. He's not big enough, not physical enough. Look at how important Franco Mostert has been for the Boks in the last. He didn't miss a tackle during the playoffs last year. He was absolutely immense. He's one of the best locks in the world as far as I'm concerned. I think last year was more important to us winning the World Cup than an Arcus Neyman was. I think he was absolutely terrific. And the line-out jumper, for example, look at that British and Irish Lions series. Now, he's a player who struggled initially. People said Kwagga Smith was too small. Even when he started first playing for the Boks, no, he's too small, doesn't really add an impact. He had that man of the match performance for the Barbarians against New Zealand, and I said, yup, you see, and now look at him. Now everyone's talking about him as being, the best impact player in the world. Players grow, players get better, players adapt. Peter Steph the Toy was absolutely torn apart. Absolutely torn apart when he was first moved to flank. He was playing flank when we got hammered in Hamilton. And he was one of the players who was really targeted, and they said that he was, not good enough. He went on to win World Player of the Year in 2019. World Player of the Year in 2019. Not to mention being the man of the match in the 2023 Rugby World Cup final. He has become one of the best players to ever play for the Springboks. People calling for him to be dropped. People calling to say that he wasn't good enough. So we as fans, there's a lot of tribalism. We're always going to want other players to play. We always want our players to play. People, Bulls fans at the moment are raging at the no David Creel. They're raging at the no Ruan Nokia. And that's natural. You watch these players. And again, what I mentioned, we watch our teams more than anything else. If I'm picking one game in the weekend, if I can only watch one game in the weekend during the URC, I'm watching my Lions game. That's what I'm watching. If you're a Bulls fan, you're watching the Bulls game. If you're a Sharks fan, you're making sure you watch that Sharks game. If you're a Stormers fan, you're watching that Stormers game. Now, over and above that, you'll probably try and watch the other South African teams, won't we? Let's just do a bit of analysis of how you watch our rugby. So I do the watch-alongs of all the South African games over the weekend, so I'm generally watching Bulls, I'm generally watching Stormers, I'm generally watching Sharks alongside the Lions. So those are the 4 teams I'm watching. I'm not watching Leicester Tigers every weekend and seeing how Andre Pollard and Jasper Wiese is doing. I'm certainly not watching a lot of Japanese rugby to see how Malcolm Marx and Damon Delany and the Buggers are doing. And I'm probably not watching a lot of top 14, see how Sia Khaleesi and Trevor Nyakana is doing. So, we're always going to want our players to do well and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that players and also what I think is important is that different players take different amounts of time to adapt to international rugby. So let's go and see what these players can do. Yes, Sachibami Gomezulu was fantastic off the bench. He will have bad games for the Springboks. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just be, absolute anomaly and be the first person ever in the history of rugby to never have a bad international game. He'll have dips of form. He's had struggles for the Stormers. Does that mean he's not going to become one of the best fly-offs in the world? No, it doesn't. But we need to allow these players to struggle, allow these players to have bad games, so they can become the best players they can be. And that's very important. Matthew Dixon saying, we don't want a repeat of the Oz versus RSA 2006 match in Brisbane. Send the best team. Do you see PFC Buthelezi getting a cap against Ireland? No, I think he'll get a cap against Portugal a week later. Ganji saying, I'm sorry, but Jordan entered it. Coming from a Lions fan, there's better younger options. No, I completely disagree. He's been one of our best players the last few years. He's had one mediocre season. The kid's 22 years old. Do you think the squad could win the next 5 home games? Which is what? Yeah, well, the next 4 of those 5 are against Ireland and New Zealand. So it would be incredible if we do. We probably do lose one of them. At least one of them, probably. And even that's okay if it is the case. But let's see. I hope so. But it's going to be a big ask. Malcolm saying, I think we are just at the later stage of a long stint with our current box that we trust, and we constantly see that a new player is just held to an unfair, different standard. Also, not a bad take, actually. The fact that we're so used to these players who are so seasoned. Majority of these players in the squad. So, for example, you look over there, and I believe, let me go through it and see who's got 50-plus tests for the box. PSF Totoy, Eben Etzebeth, Vincent Koch, Sia Khaleesi, Frans Malherbe, Malcolm Marx, Bongi Manambi, Franco Mostert. I think Trevor Nyakana's got... Yeah, so that's what, 9. They're more than 9. So 9 or 19. No, it's 9. Yeah, 9. Right there, yeah. Let's go. Peter Toy, Eben Etzebeth, Vincent Koch, Khaleesi, Marx, Malherbe, Bongi Mostert, Trevor. Yeah, 9. 9 out of the 22 of those players have 50-plus caps. And of those 9, who was starting in that World Cup final? Who was involved in that World Cup final? Who would have been involved in the World Cup final as well? Malcolm Marx wasn't, but he would have been. Jasper Wiese, one of them that wasn't. Arcus Neyman, who's will get there if he was fit enough. Oxenchair is a matter of time before he gets there. So, these players are such seasoned internationals. They're used to playing at this level. They've been playing at this level for a long time, and it's not fair to then compare them to the youngsters. When they're youngsters, that's exactly what they are. They're young. They're volatile. It makes them exciting because sometimes they'll do things that others can't, because that's the whole point. They're new. They're going to try things. For example, they've got different attitude. They've got different. They talk about the party trick. That's what Rassi talks about. Or I think I'm trying to remember who it was that sort of coined the phrase. But apparently everyone's got that sort of one thing that sets them out as a special player. And those young players will have that. But you've got to let them adapt. Intan Corsi saying, honestly, the defensive prowess and creativity of Jesse Creel has gone up a level since taking his opportunity after injury. But now with back, I truly believe he is our best outside centre. I'm not sure if you're talking about as our outside centre or Jesse Creel. I don't think Jesse Creel gets dropped. I think Jesse Creel is another good example of a player who dips in and out. Jesse Creel in 2015 World Cup was incredibly important. By the time it came to 2019, he'd been usurped by the Kanya Last year, people were getting upset that he was playing. I've always rated him, to be fair, and don't try to say I didn't, because I've got a lot of abuse for it. Look at him last season. Barton said, I like that you admitted you do not watch lots of rugby. If you did, you will know how good Tyron Green has been and that he deserves a shot to prove people wrong. I don't know if that's supposed to be a dig at me. Are you really going to tell a Lions fan about Tyron Green? You're going to tell a person that's done several videos about how he should be part of the squad? It's a bit of a weird comment. I'm just trying to understand. If you're trying to basically imply that I don't watch rugby, don't know what I'm saying. I was watching Tyron Green at 20 levels, boy. Watch yourself. Watch yourself. Do not come here and try and talk about the fact that I know Tyron Green is. I've been advocating for him. In fact, go and find my rant when we released him from the Lions. There's one player you can't count to me. It is Tyron Green. Leave my boy alone. Well, no, to be fair, you're back, my boy. Leave me alone about my boy because I've been calling for him. It's going to make me very upset when he plays for England. And I'm going to cry. There's going to be tears coming down the face over there. So, yeah. So, I'm a little bit triggered there for that one. Leandro Bez has got a few players there. He reckons the front row of Ox, Marks, Malherbe, Eben and Sosia, Pierre Toy, Ruus as our starting pack for Ireland. Then Bongi, Inekane, Koch, Achia, Kwacha, Pepsi, Mark Verstappen, and a back. You know, not a bad. Oh, 7-1 split there. 7-1 split. Nice and ballsy. I like it. I like it. Jacques Houston saying, FYI, Jordan Henderson has a tackling success rate of 94%. He seems to be very reliable in general, something which can help release our world-class wings. On a different note, can Blitzboks get a medal in Paris? I hope so. Actually, yes. No, they can. They can. Whether they will, I don't know. It's so difficult to know what to expect from this Blitzboks side because one day they are coming 7th in the World Series. The next day, they are world beaters. And they've had really 2 bad years. But at the end of the day, it's a Olympic situation where you've got to play, 5 games? Really? You got to win 5 games? You got to win 2 group games, quarterfinal, semi-final, and final. Yeah, you got to win 5 games. Ideally 6. But you got to win 5 games. And if they can go and win 5 games, then they can get a medal. If they can go and win... Well, if they win 5 games, they should guarantee themselves a medal. And if you win 4 games, well, you can still win a medal. It's just have to be a bronze. But you know, I get that. That's the nice thing about the Olympics. If you get to, for example, that final, you're guaranteed at least a silver medal, which we'd very much take. We've not got the easiest pool. New Zealand in there. I don't think it's too bad. I don't think it actually really is an easy pool. To be fair, there are only 3 of them, but we'll wait and see. They played nicely on Sunday. Defended really well, which is good. I think they've got some nice experience back. But I don't want to get too optimistic about that 7th side. Albert saying, at least Sasha is no longer available for England. Stanford Blue saying, I feel for Alwick Low. Ricardo saying, Tyron Green and Augustus is going to play for England. CP News saying, Grand Slam would piss off World Rugby, but man, that would feel great after a World Cup. Sorry, not the Grand Slam. Double saying, won't be long until England call up Green. Rassi doesn't rate him clearly. Yeah, it's an interesting one, that whole Tyron Green. And I think, you know, Tyron Green was very open about the fact that when he made the move to the UK, that he had a conversation with Rassi Erasmus, or at least with SC Rugby, talking about, was this now going to take him out of contention for the box? And it supposedly wasn't. So it's an interesting one. Louis Smith saying, old man Vili does not deserve the green and gold. Yo, imagine being a Vili LaRue hater in 2024. Imagine being a Vili LaRue hater in 2024. You can lead. You can take a horse to water. Hey? And the lack of respect Vili LaRue gets still continues to get. I mean, how much more does the man have to do before we all start rating him? He's going to play for the next World Cup? No. Does he deserve to get to 100 games for the box? Certainly. How many games is he away from that? 7. So in theory, he could get there this year. He could become a Springbok Centurion. But at the end of the day, it's only the bronze medal in the 2015 World Cup, the gold medal in the 2019 World Cup, the gold medal in the 2023 World Cup, as well as the British and Irish Lions Series, as well as the Rugby Championship. That's, at the end of the day, the only thing he's really won. So, fair enough. Fair enough. Leave my boy alone. Willem Villy, coming up to the end of his career. Right, people, speaking of the end, we're going to wrap up there. Thank you very much for joining me over the last hour. It's been fun. Always nice to debate and discuss and engage on the squad. So thank you very much for joining me. We have got a video up on the squad. We will be doing it some things like a predicted 15, for example, and the likes over the next few days. So make sure you check in on that.